Hi everybody, and welcome to my video introducing the Balda Juwella. This is a folding camera, a 6x9 or 6x4.5 for some of the models. Folding camera. It used 120 film. It has no meter. Shutter speeds of time, bulb, 1/125th, 1/50th, and 1/100th. A viewfinder frame coverage of about 100%, but it's offset, and no flash sync. The Balda Juwella's target market was, insofar as I can tell, entry-level users. It was a fairly inexpensive camera compared to other competing or era-specific cameras. Had very few shutter speeds, a very simple shutter. Most of the exposure controls are provided by the aperture, which goes from f6.3, which is fast-ish for a folding camera, down to f32, which is a fairly impressive range of shutter speed of aperture sizes. During the camera's relatively short manufacturing period, the body changed often. Let me show you some of the things to look for with your Juwella. Some Juwellas have the keyhole, others do not. What is the keyhole? This is the keyhole. And it took me a long time to find out what it was actually for. There were a lot of resources that said, who knows? I found one that said it was for an accessory cable release. Cable release went from here and then you locked it in here so that you could hold the camera this way and have an on-body cable release, an on-body shutter release. Some of these cameras are dual format. Others are only 6x9, and others are only 6x4.5. Mine is both. It can do 6x9 or 6x4.5, or it could if I had the screen for it. I don't have the mask, rather, that would block it to make it 6x4.5. Some of them have different release buttons. I have my shutter release button right here. Some of them have Pronto shutters. Others have Balda shutters. The Balda shutters may actually have made by Pronto if they include a self-timer. Some had no-name shutters, and the last two models of this came with high specification Comper and Pronto 2 shutters. I have the basic Balda shutter with 0 bells and whistles on it. And one of the things, they did different shutters to make different levels of Juwella. That's what a lot of the manufacturers did. You could buy the Balda Juwella, the cheapo one with the Balda brand shutter that does very little, or you could buy the high-end one with the Comper 2 shutter that does a lot. And so that provided some levels of variation, whereas manufacturers today would just simply give all of those cameras a different name. Manufacturers in the 30s and 40s just called them the same thing and gave them different levels of trim. Some of these had wrist straps. Mine has a wrist strap up here. It's in very bad shape, about to fall off any day. Some of them had longer wrist straps than this, apparently. And some of them had the company name on them. Mine says Balda up along the top, right here. Some of them said Balda, others were blank, and I suspect that some of them were left blank because they were made for other manufacturers. They had different leather finishes, different textures pressed into the leather. And so while I say that they had different levels of trim based on cost, that's my guess. I should specify that's my guess. They could all have just been cobbled together from spare parts. I like to think that they were designed based on trim level. Balda produced versions of this camera for themselves as well as other manufacturers. So there are who knows how many other brand names of camera that are built on this frame and with this body, and that are effectively the exact same camera. These were produced by Balda Werk Max Baldweg from 1933 to 1939 in Dresden, Germany. McKeown's book documents 4 distinct iterations of the Balda Juwella: 33, 36, 38, and 39. And so it was preceded first by the Balda Juwella. This body was, and that was the 33 to 36 version. And it was concurrent with many other Juwellas that were sold to other companies, such as Kodak, in fact, for rebranding, and other Balda models, the Baldina, Baldax, and some of the Balda branded box cameras, and it was followed by the Juwella too. So I'll tell you what, if you've got your Balda, grab it. Before we go around taking a look at what all's on this, I'm going to help you try and figure out approximately how old your Balda is. So there were the 4 iterations noted by McKeown. From 33 to 36, the camera was labeled Juwella, not Juwella, and possibly on the leather, definitely on the lens. So it might have said Juwella somewhere embossed in the leather, or it might not have, but the lens, well, mine says Rodenstock. It's not a Balda lens, but the Juwella lens would have said Juwella on it somewhere. From 1936 to 1938, Juwella was replaced by Juwella. They had diamond or 3-line faceplates. I have the diamond style faceplate. There were ones that had 3 concentric lines instead of diamonds. They added the keyhole feature. They added the winding knob to replace the winding key. And here is the winding knob. It looks like a key to me still, but I don't know, maybe it's one of the old ones that had the key but not the knob. I don't know. From 1938 to 1939, the body shape was changed. And what they did to make the body shape change was they made the ends steeper and less round. So older ones didn't taper like this, they were rounded. So mine's actually not that old because it's got the steeper body style. And they also added as an optional feature a reverse Galilean finder to replace this fold-out viewfinder. So again, leading some credence to my thought that this is a very inexpensive model. It does not have the viewfinder, does not have a good shutter, but it does have the fold-out finder and the Balda name shutter. From 1939, this was the only model year with the option for a body release. Now, some 1939 cameras might not have the body release, but they removed the keyhole for 1939 and then just added a release on the body, so you would just push a button up here instead of on the shutter to take the picture. Now, there are a couple things in this. These aren't all directly from McKeown. These aren't all directly from sources. Some of these I deduced myself based on looking at dozens of pictures of Juwellas online. For instance, the body shape being made steeper and less round. That was changed. Also, in 1938, they changed the spring structure for the tripod leg. That's another thing that you can see looking at the different photos of them. That mine, for instance, has a spring that goes all the way to the back. It's that little rusty band on the bottom there. Some of them had different springs, and they changed that in about 1938, insofar as I could tell. The other thing that yeah, that was it. That was everything that I put together based on photos of the Juwellas. So let's take a look at some of the camera's features. So if you have your Juwella and you want to follow along, this is the top of the camera. It is basically devoid of features except for this one flip up viewing screen, and what you would do is look through it to sight up your image. And there are some parallax lines on the front here. I believe that those lines are used for helping you frame 6 by 4.5 instead of 6 by 9. A lot of sources said they were parallax lines. I'm not quite certain how parallax lines would function in this arrangement. To me, this looks more like a convenient halfway split of the frame width so that you know what is in your portrait-oriented 6x4.5 frame instead of your landscape-oriented 6x9 frame. That's my thinking on that, actually. Then, on the camera's bottom, we'll do this a little bit out of order because this is a slightly wonky camera. We have the winding key over here, and we have the tripod bushing here. And this is a larger than normal tripod bushing, and we have the body release right there. On the camera's lens, we have the focusing ring here, the shutter release, the shutter speed selector right here, which allows you to change your shutter speed. On the bottom side, we have the aperture dial. This is your viewfinder, so if you don't want to use the spring-up viewfinder, you can use this one instead. With the camera's body closed, we can see here another tripod bushing, so you can mount this on a tripod in either portrait or landscape orientation. This is the kickstand, which pops down to provide support for the front door for the as it folds out, and of course the keyhole. On the camera's back, we have the red windows that you look through to determine what what exposure you're on, and make sure that you don't do double exposures and that you advance your film properly. And so what we're looking at inside the camera here is this is the camera obscura. It folds out, it's the accordion bellows. Here are some film guide rails which help keep the film properly aligned. Film rollers help keep it advancing smoothly. And then the film pressure plate over here helps to keep it flat on plane. So while we have the camera facing this way, let's load some film and see how it works, how it feeds through the camera. The film release is over on this side, and there's an arrow pointing down and a very tiny little lever you push to open up the back. Now what you want to do is, if you haven't already, you want to move the old film spool from this side. Oops, I take that back. If you haven't already, this is where the new film spool goes. So if you have the old film spool that you just shot here, you want to take it out, bring it over here to this side, slide it into place. Oops, don't slide it into place yet. Leave it like that. And then you put your new film spool in over here. There we go. Push it in the top and then rotate it in like that. Pull out a leader, and we're going to get the leader started outside of the film body, which is slightly different than the way many cameras work, but you'll see why in just a second. Then we'll put this in, and that just makes it a little bit easier to get that whole thing loaded. Now we just rotate the key to start the connection on this, and we just start advancing, and we advance until the double arrow is aligned with that film roller, and now we close it. The next thing we're going to do is advance the film until we see numbers in the red windows. And next we'll see some circular rings of dots, and we'll stop at the one right there. Okay, so when you shoot 6x9, you want to shoot with the 1 with the frame number in this window right here, because the tape that where the film starts will now be right over here, just off the side of the film plane. Let's find that. Actually, and I can't even find it. It's wrapped down there a little bit, but it's beyond the film plane, so that you start off with the 1 over here, and then you have a full frame, and you get all 8 frames. Then when you advance the film, If you just advance it until the 1 is in this window, you're going to overlap your frames. So you keep advancing until you see the 2 in this window. And then you just advance each number through that window on the left until you're done with all of your exposures. All right, so let's talk about how to open your camera safely. If you simply push the camera release button right there, it's going to pop open. There's a couple things that can happen. One is you can damage the bellows. They're getting old in all of these cameras. You can also do damage to some of the other components because, again, they're getting old. Also, what happens is when the bellows expand really quickly, they create suction, and that can pull the film off plane, which can actually pull the film into the bellows area, and then you've got a bit of a mess. You have to advance a few frames to get it back on plane and be able to close the camera safely. All right, so to open the camera, there we go. Just put my hand underneath it, and that allows me to prevent it from opening too far too fast. You pull it out until you hear it catch in place. There we go. Everything is set. We've got the tripod leg down so that it's not going anywhere. Now you can see on the struts right here that it's got a little notch cut into it. And when you close it, it has one on the other side as well. You put your thumbs here, and then you just squeeze it a little bit and pull it up. One thing to make sure of as you close it is that this viewfinder right here is up. If it's this way, you will scratch the viewfinder and jam this shut, and that's a little bit tricky to reopen again. So make sure that that viewfinder is up. When you close the camera, it clicks into place, and it's good to go back into your pocket where it can be safely held until you need to take a picture with it. And this is the Balda Juwella, simultaneously an ordinary and pedestrian camera for its age and of its age, as well as a creative departure from mundane folding camera design. It's best described as a monkey box. It has the keyhole, some of them, and it could take 6x9 images or 6x4.5, like other cameras fairly. But it was also mechanically simple and represented an affordable option in a time when affordable options were needed. And the designers, I believe, sought to make it something different and better. Something that stood out from other myriad folding cameras that filled camera stores and mail-in catalogs in the 1930s. And in many ways, the Juwella captures the best qualities of the world economic conditions in the decades between the wars. The 1930s spawned creative innovation forged in widespread economic hardships in both Europe and the US. The Great Depression. And the Juwella emerged from a Great Depression German economy, an economy with nearly 30% unemployment. And Germany responded to this economy by implementing large-scale public works. Think of the Autobahn. People returned to work. People had money to spend. And cameras like the Juwella became affordable and more common. These cameras were the average Joe's camera. These cameras were, of their day, the smartphones or the point-and-shoots that you might have in your back pocket. Cameras like the Juwella and the Juwella itself served to record friends and families. And the time in Germany when the pre-war economic rise to power had not yet become the atrocity of World War II. And so these and many other similar cameras forged in economic hardship became the tools that shared a hopeful, more prosperous, pre-war society with other members in that hopeful and more prosperous pre-war society. And yes, pre-war Germany had rationing: wood, food, fuel, and other things. But they never rationed film. And they never rationed community. And they never rationed people's ability to record and share their lives with each other. To me, this Juwella represents the saddest fact about cameras. They are inanimate. They cannot talk, nor remember. But what if they could? What if we could sit for an afternoon with a camera and see the world that passed through its lens, the lives lived by the people whose pockets it was stashed in? What fascinating and terrifying vicarious lives we could live. So a few things not to do with this camera. Obviously, don't touch the shutter. If you're touching the shutter, you've taken the lenses off, so try to avoid that if at all possible. It is an old and fragile camera, so don't open it too quickly and treat it with an extra amount of care, because they are starting to get a little bit fragile, even though they are still good photo takers and good shooting cameras. And also, don't store it in your car, because the heat and the cold will ruin your camera, especially the bellows material. Don't store it in a plastic bag or box, because fungus will eat the bellows material and leather and do some serious damage to your camera. And just remember, even though it's old, it is still a precision instrument. And as long as you treat your camera with care and respect, as long as you take care of your camera, it will take care of you. And it's a fun little camera. It's not something you're going to use every day, and it's not a super serious camera, not by any standards ever. But it can be a lot of fun to use. And it takes very nicely sized images. So in just a second, you'll get to see some of the images that I've taken with this camera. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'm more than happy to answer them, and I'm pretty quick about responding. If you have suggestions for other videos or ideas, let me know. In fact, I've improved my videos a lot through your guys' suggestions. And if you have ideas for videos, if I have the equipment and the technical know-how, I'm more than happy to make it for you. If this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. And one last thing before we go to photos, thank you guys for watching. Ow, ow, my arm just touched a light bulb. To load film, arrows tell us we're getting close. Numbers, okay, so we don't want to stop here. We want to go over to the second. So when you're shooting 6:9, you want to shoot each frame out of the window closest to the film key. And to demonstrate that, so to open the camera, the first thing that you want to do is hold it upright, and that seems to make it a little bit easier to get it to pop out. Come on.